Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Sports Stat Media. My name is Andrew Emerson and I will be walking you through the NFL offseason winners and losers today. So we're going to look at three teams who were winners in the offseason that had the biggest gains, and we're going to look at three teams who were the biggest losers and lost the most of their free agents. So let's go ahead and get started. So first up, coming in at our number 6 team is our first loser, and that is the LA Chargers. Now, the Chargers had an okay offseason. They signed some quality free agents. An example could be Brian Bulaga. He was a quality free agent tackle that signed with the Chargers, although he is a little bit on the older side. They also got Austin Eckler back. They signed Chris Harris. Hunter Henry was franchise tagged. They got Linval Joseph on a 2-year deal. And they traded for Pro Bowl guard Try Turner only for Russell Okung, who was an older offensive tackle, who probably they were going to let go anyways. But here we see their losses, and the losses really are what stacks up because a lot of these guys were starters on their team. First of all, you have Phillip Rivers, and he left for the Indianapolis Colts. Then you have Melvin Gordon, and he left for the Denver Broncos. And then you have Derek Watt, who left for the Steelers to be with his brother TJ Watt. Russell Okung obviously was traded to the Panthers for Try Turner, as we mentioned before. And Thomas Davis, a starting linebacker who is actually pretty decent, was left for the Redskins. And then we had Adrian Phillips, one of the most underrated players in the league, actually left for the New England Patriots. So you see there that the losses really stack up for the LA Chargers, and these are positions that they're going to have to fill in the draft. And while they do have high draft picks, it's not necessarily going to be the same as having quality starting guys. So that's the reason that I put him here at our number 6 spot as a loser. So next up here we have our first winner, and they are coming in at number 5, and that is actually the Cleveland Browns. Yes, I believe that the Cleveland Browns had a good offseason for their standards, and they signed a couple of quality guys. Andrew Billings would be the first one. Jack Conklin, he signed on a 3-year deal that takes care of their right tackle issue. And then they signed Austin Hooper, one of the best tight ends in the NFL, on a 4-year deal. They tendered Kareem Hunt, so he'll most likely be back again next season. He was a quality running back at one point in Kansas City, and he can probably revitalize his career in Kevin Stefanski's run-heavy offense. They also signed Kevin Johnson from the Bills on a 1-year, $3.5 million deal. They also signed Carl Joseph, who is a good, strong safety, kind of dipped down a little bit, but he's been quality for the Raiders for the past few seasons. And they got a backup quarterback in Case Keenum to battle with Baker Mayfield for that starting spot, although Baker Mayfield will most likely win that. He will provide Baker some competition. They also traded for Andy Janovich from the Broncos. He's a fullback. That's a quality there for their guy who's going to be the blocking for those running backs. But ultimately, they only lost really 2 guys on their team that were quality, and that's 2 linebackers. Christian Kirksey, who went to the Packers, and then they also lost Joe Sherbert to the Jaguars. Although he's probably going to perform very well for the Jaguars. They couldn't have paid him the type of money that the Jags offered. Their remaining needs, obviously could use a free safety now that Demarius Randall also left. They obviously need linebackers because of the 2 that left in free agency as their starters. And they could use a left tackle still, and most of the O-line on there besides the tackle, center, and left guard spot. So next up at number 4, we have our next loser of the offseason, and that is actually going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yes, so the Jacksonville Jaguars, obviously they traded away Jalen Ramsey during the season, so that's not going to count in this offseason, but that is a big hole that he left, as he was one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL at covering in both man and zone coverage. They signed a couple of quality guys. Darqueze Dennard, he's going to be a depth option at that cornerback position. Tyler Eifert, he's kind of dipped down from what we've seen previously from him, but it's a good contract, 3 years, $13.5 million. And then they have Rashard Melvin on a 1-year, $2.25 million deal. And then they have Joe Sherbert, who we just mentioned with the Browns. He signed on a 5-year, $53 million deal, which is a massive contract, but he's going to be a starting middle linebacker for them, or potentially on one of those outside positions, with Telvin Smith leaving a year ago. Now onto their losses. They're going to trade away Yannick Ngakoue. That he's already said he's not going to play for them on the franchise tag, so he will be traded. They traded away Nick Foles for a 4th-round pick. I like Nick Foles. I think he'll do very well with the Bears, especially reuniting with Matt Nagy. So that was a bit of a loss for them, but they did get a 4th-round pick out of it. They lost Jeff Swaim, who they cut. They traded away Calais Campbell, one of the best defensive ends in the NFL, for a 5th-round pick. And then they released Marcel Darius and also Jake Ryan, along with they traded away A.J. Bouye to the Broncos for a 4th-round pick. That's an absolute steal for the Broncos, as Bouye is one of the top 20 cornerbacks in the league right now. So the Jaguars have a lot of work to do in the offseason. They have to draft most likely a cornerback in the 1st round, as well as some D-line and maybe a safety in one of the later rounds, as that's kind of a deep position in this year's draft. So coming in next, we have our number 3 team, and it is another winner, and that is actually going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers might be a team that you'd be like surprised, like, wow, they actually think that they did good in the offseason. But yes, they had very quality signings, especially Tom Brady. Everybody knows Tom Brady. He is widely regarded as the GOAT quarterback. He signed on a 2-year, $50 million deal. It's fully guaranteed, and it has a no trade and no tag clause, meaning they can't franchise tag him or trade him away. They also franchise tagged Shaquille Barrett, who led the NFL in sacks last season, I believe, as an edge rusher, outside linebacker. They signed Joe Haig for some depth on their O-line, and they also signed Jason Pierre-Paul back for a 2-year, $27 million deal. And they also re-signed Ndamukong Suh, defensive tackle, on a 1-year, $8 million deal. He's still quality. He's not going to be as good as he was last season, but he will return. Some of their losses, they lost quarterback Jameis Winston. Obviously, that comes with signing Tom Brady. They lost Brashad Perriman, who was kind of an underrated wide receiver, actually, for them last season. Offensive tackle DeMar Dotson, they're going to have to look for that in the draft this year. And then they also lost Carl Nassib, who is a lower key signing. He's not going to be as important, though. But some needs that they're going to look for are going to be O-line. Obviously, I see them targeting maybe like a Jedrick Willis or a Tristan Wirfs in the 1st round at that offensive tackle position. They could still use a running back. I thought that they were going to trade for David Johnson until the Texans made the stupid move of trading away DeAndre Hopkins. And they could also use some D-line help, especially to help Vita Vea and Ndamukong Suh. 2, we have our next loser, and that is actually going to be the New England Patriots. Yes, the team that lost Tom Brady is our number 2 loser. Before we get to number 1, who is our winner? So, the New England Patriots obviously lost Tom Brady, but here we're going to go through their signings first. They signed Brian Hoyer. It was a quality signing. 1 year, $2 million. He knows the offense. He'll come in there, compete with Jared Stidham for the starting job. They also signed Devin McCourty back. He's good. 2 years, $23 million with $17 million guaranteed. They signed Adrian Phillips to a 2-year, $6 million deal. Very quality signing. I like that a lot. They brought back special teamer Matthew Slater. And they franchise tagged Joe Thuney, which is something that the Patriots don't do a lot with the franchise tag. They don't normally do that. But let's get into their losses. And a lot of these were actually to the Lions. You could call them the New England Lions if you want, or the Detroit Patriots. They lost Tom Brady to the Buccaneers. Obviously, we've already stated that. They lost Danny Shelton to the Lions. It was a 2-year, $8 million deal. They lost Elandon Roberts to the Dolphins. They lost Jamie Collins to the Lions. And they lost Kyle Van Noy to the Dolphins, as well as they trade away Duron Harmon to the Lions. And all these guys were either quality depth pieces or were starting on the team that had one of the best defenses. I can't remember if it was the best, but it was at least top 3 in the league last season. So these free agent losses are really going to hurt the Patriots next season. Obviously, their needs, they're going to look for a quarterback. They need some linebacker and some edge help. And they still need to solve their wide receiver and tight end problem. So those all are going to add up into the Patriots being in the mid-tier teams next season or even below that. Next up, at number 1, we have our final winner, and that is actually going to be the Buffalo Bills. Now, honestly, I personally feel like the Bills had the best offseason out of everyone. They signed quality free agents, and they traded for a superstar wide receiver, as well as only losing 3 or 4 key guys in their defense, actually. So we're going to go through this real quick. Mario Addison, he got a 3-year, $30 million deal. Vernon Butler, he signed a 2-year, $18 million deal. He's a defensive tackle. So those 2 guys will provide a lot of defensive help for them. Mario Addison probably going to replace Lorenzo Alexander in that linebacker edge situation. They also signed Quentin Jefferson. He's going to be a good depth piece. Josh Norman, he signed on a 1-year, $6 million contract. Quentin Spain signed on a 3-year, $15 million deal, so they brought him back. And all these guys are going to provide the Bills with quality starting or depth next season, so they weren't a waste of anything. And then they obviously traded for Stephon Diggs for only their 1st-round pick, 5th-round pick, 6th-round pick, and a 4th-round pick next year. So that's a very low cost, and they get a 7th-round pick back. He's going to provide them with that wide receiver help that they need. And for their losses here, we see Jordan Phillips left for the Cardinals, Shaq Lawson left for the Dolphins. Obviously, that's going to hurt them the most. Lorenzo Alexander, he actually retired, I believe, and they also lost Kevin Johnson, as we previously said, to the Browns. But overall, their offseason was a big hit, and if they can hit in the draft, I could see them being either the number 1 seed in the AFC or fighting for it at least. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Andrew Emerson. I was your host today. Be sure to check back in for Sports Stat Media. Obviously, while you're down there, go ahead and like the video and subscribe and look at some more of our videos, and go ahead and comment your takes. Let us know what you thought of our 6 teams that we provided here for you. But yeah, thanks so much, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.